What is up, everybody? This is a little bit of a different video. I decided I would delve a little bit more into something about myself. As many people, who know me personally, I do have many phobias. I'm not afraid of everything. I do have very specific phobias but there are a few, I would say there's a good few of them. The main one for me is the fear of needles, specifically medical needles. I know that this particular phobia can actually, spread to, any sharp object. For me, it is only medical-based syringes. However, I think it's worth noting that there are about 4 different types of this phobia. So I'm going to run through the names really quickly, and just know I might end up butchering these names. The first is vasovagal, which is basically it's basically one that makes you faint around needles. It's not really about the fear of the needle itself, it's more the experience of it. There's resistive. True to the name, you are resisting the needle, and this can easily be fixed with psychotherapy. And hyperalgesic, I think is how you pronounce that one. That one's more about the pain of the needle, as opposed to the needle itself. What I have is associative fear of needles. I'm going to read you the description for this from my phone. Associative fear of needles is the second most common type, affecting 30% of needle phobics, i.e. me. This type is the classic specific phobia in which a traumatic event, such as an extremely painful medical procedure or witnessing a family member or friend undergo such procedure, causes the patient to associate all procedures following involving needles with the original negative experience. This fear of needles causes symptoms that are primarily psychological in nature, such as an extreme unexplained anxiety, insomnia, preoccupation with the oncoming procedure, and panic attacks. Effective treatments include cognitive therapy, hypnosis, and/or the administration of anti-anxiety medication. So, that's me in a nutshell here. Every time I have to have something with needles done, I am in a full-on panic. Generally, getting shots for me is not as bad as getting blood drawn. With a shot, it's, they stick you, you're done. It doesn't take very long. The needle's not in my skin long enough for me to really, freak out or anything. Obviously, I'm going to see the needle and I'm going to panic. That's just a given. But once they get the shot over with, boom. I'm good to go for the rest of the day. When it comes to getting my blood drawn, however, it is a whole other story. Essentially, there's a lot that goes on with me. My blood drawing, it's a lot of fighting, a lot of reasoning, a lot of explaining I am terrified of needles. And I will give a lot of the people who have drawn my blood credit. They are very open, they are very accepting and understanding. Though, the way my brain works, a lot of their, I don't want to say tricks, because they're not tricking you. They're trying to get you to be reasonable, which is completely fair. They want to do their job. But basically, the way they do things does not work with me. We're like, oh, look at this tiny little needle. It's flexible. It doesn't hurt. It has to hurt, honestly. That's the way it seems to me. It feels like, no matter how big or small the needle is, it's going in my skin. That is scaring me. And it's not even really the pain. The pain sucks afterwards. It's in, I'm crying because it burns and stings, but beyond that, it's the idea of something going into my skin and into my vein that scares me. And the reason behind this, I'm going to delve into what caused this for me. So, little backstory. I used to be on medication for bipolar. I'm not going to go into the specific medications or anything because there were quite a few throughout my life, and I was put on something that was not the cure for what I had. Well, there's no real cure, but it wasn't helping. Like, it would make me sleep too long, it was affecting my body and my mood, it was just a mess. And I was informed that it can damage my liver. So I was constantly having to do blood tests to see if it was hurting me or helping me. Which, you know, it makes sense. You're on medication, you want to make sure it's helping you. However, when it's monthly, it was a monthly, well, it wasn't really, well, sometimes it'd be monthly, I think. I don't really remember. My memory's a little fuzzy because of all kinds of things, especially the medication. Like, medication itself made the fuzziness way worse. Like, I was a zombie for most of this whole thing, but I do remember certain things, and God, this is hard to talk about without sounding like a lunatic. So I was 8 years old. This was one of the first experiences to get my blood drawn that I had. The other one, I remember them using a needle that was like that long, which that did not help anything. But it was a small clinic. I do remember that. I was brought into the back room alone. And I sat down. They strapped me in and everything, and they had like that armband that like squeezes your arm and makes the vein pop out and everything. So this guy comes in. He looks like he's, I don't know, late teens, early 20s. He doesn't seem that old. He's like, alright, I'm gonna be the one drawing your blood today. I'm Dr. So-and-so. And he begins to put the needle in my arm. He says, well, I missed your vein. He does it again. You gotta stop being tense. I can't find your vein. Well, I'm not tense. I'm actually very calm and relaxed. Even though I'm hyperventilating, my arm was actually very limp. You know, it was just hanging there. So he sticks me a third time. He looks me in the eye and goes, you need to relax. You need to relax so we can find your vein. Does it a fourth time. He says, you know what, let's try the other arm. He does the other arm. He sticks me 5 times and says, relax. You're rolling your veins. We can't find them. So I'm now shaking. I'm terrified. There are needles in both of my arms. And ultimately, another doctor comes in and says, what in the hell are you doing? Pulls all of them out, apologizes to me, gets it done, boom, I'm out of there, shaking like a damn leaf. From that point on, I was terrified of needles, thinking that it was going to be the same experience of them not being able to find my vein. And that's honestly where that whole thing starts with me. It's not easy for me to talk about without thinking about it, but afterwards, when I was talking to therapists and what have you, they would say, oh, when you do blood work, I'd immediately begin to hyperventilate. I would begin shaking. I'd be breathing heavy, saying, no, I can't do that again. And the therapist that I had would tell me, it's not that big of a deal. Not understanding that I was basically traumatized by this thing happening. And I have to live with this. Like, that's something I need to understand. Like, there's help for phobias. This is something that I'm stuck with until I can find somebody who understands and can be like, hey, let me help you. And I have brought this up to therapists before. So, and they've tried to get me some help with it. They tried talking me through it, and they said, oh, well, do you ever think it's in your head, or whatever, and, you know, and stuff like that. Now, how does this translate to DID? And how do my alters or others help me? Traumatic events can come from anywhere. And DID stands for anything you deem a traumatic event. I partly believe this is one of the reasons that Serenity is as good at dealing with me as she is. She is my sense of calm. I remember having to do dental work, get dental work done to fix this tooth, and it did involve needles. Thanks to her, I was able to get through it much easier. They are there to help you with your trauma. And after a certain point, when I was living in Wyoming, I had to have blood taken from my hand because I was having a crisis episode. I was in crisis, basically. It was not a good time. And they couldn't get my arm to cooperate, so they just took it from my hand because it was easier. She stepped in. Everything was fine. I was just then beginning to realize that I had DID and taking notes of everything, and honestly, I feel like, in a way, like, I know she's been there a long time. Serenity always been around. But I think this was kind of like the real rise of who she is. But I feel bad that I didn't know about her sooner. Because if I did, and I understood DID better when I was younger, I feel like I wouldn't have as many bad experiences with doctors. All this being said, this is why I make this channel. To educate people on why DID is not a curse. You're not possessed, you're not haunted. You know, they are there to help you. And despite my phobia, they have helped me more through my life than they have done anything else. Like, there have been issues, obviously, but when it comes to something like this, you can count on them if you have DID. You can count on other, you know, depending on your system, of course, but there really should be something like this in your system, somebody there who can help you kind of deal with yourself, if that makes any sense. I'm not saying it's mandatory, I'm not saying everybody's going to have one, but I kind of wish that everybody did, and that's what I mean by there should be. And I know there are some that just don't feel like anyone's very helpful to them, and it's rough. Long story short, though, this is just a long segue to say, like, hey, they're helpful, you know, and I have this phobia, but it's not that big of a deal. Honestly, though, at the end of the day, I am afraid of needles. That's not going to change anytime soon, and it does affect me, you know, in terms of, like, medical procedures and dental work and everything. But, I think I can count on my system to get me through it. Anyway, sorry for that kind of long-winded end segment. Thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate you stopping by. I always do. If you like what I do here, like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. It really helps me out a lot, especially with the algorithm on YouTube. Excuse me, it is notes. And remember, you are beautiful, you're valid, you're important, you're very, very, very important to me and everyone up here. And I will see you in the next video that I make. So until then, goodbye.